Joining us now, Texans Radio, Texans General Manager Nick Caserio. Nick, good to see you. I know it's a short week, a lot of work to do. We appreciate the visit. Thoughts on coming off of what happened Sunday and having to erase the memory, but learn from it in anticipation of Philadelphia Thursday?
Yeah, it's really like every week. So whatever happens in the game on Sunday, you kind of go back, figure out what happened. There's some good things, there's some bad things, try to get some things corrected, and then really you got to move on to the next opponent and the team, whoever you're going to face that particular Sunday. In this case, it's Thursday. So we'll have the players in here today. We'll kind of wrap up from the game yesterday. Some things will have application. Other things that we're going to have to do will be specific to what the Eagles do. So kind of have to make that transition and just kind of turn the page and move forward.
Nick, whether you do anything or you don't at the trade deadline, does it make it more difficult that the trade deadline is a week in which you have a short week?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd say not necessarily. So I think if you're going to do anything, you're going to do it regardless. So I'd say the reality is if you do acquire a player, let's say you bring a player in, the chances of getting ready to play this particular week would probably be minimal. So it would just entail having to make a roster move. So otherwise, it doesn't necessarily preclude you from doing anything. So if you do end up making some kind of transaction, you just really kind of planning for probably future weeks. Yeah.
With what happened Sunday, does it make it difficult to evaluate individuals when team performance wasn't what you were looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think collectively as a team, we weren't good enough. So offensively, defensively, in the kicking game. So probably all three phases. There's certainly things that everybody can do better. All of us can do better. So I think it's just got to be real about what happened and just kind of look at yourself in the mirror and just try to figure out what can we do better. Try to find some solution. You're not going to fix everything all at once. Say the run game it's different. The Eagles' run game is different than the Tennessee run game. So the run game will be a big part of it. They're a good running team. Tackling has been a little bit of an issue, so trying to work on tackling and offensively, just trying to find limit the negative plays and trying to create more positive plays to get ourselves in more scoring situations. So those are things you do every week. So you really want to just make it specific to what do we have to do against the Eagles this week relative to what they do schematically, and just try to give ourselves the best chance to have some success.
Nick, are you of a mindset that after you have a rough afternoon, no matter what the sport is, to get back on the field, the bump, the pitch, whatever it is, as soon as possible? You're that mindset, like you'd rather do that as opposed to wait 10 days to have to play on a Sunday or a Thursday later on?
Yeah, the reality is you have to have a short-term memory regardless, because what happens in that previous game, quite frankly, doesn't have any bearing on what's going to happen on Sunday, because you're dealing with a new set of circumstances, new set of players, new personnel, new scheme. So really it's just understanding and educating yourself on the opponent and just going through your weekly process. That's the most important thing. So win, lose, or draw, you have to do the same thing every week. So regardless of what happens in the game, you have to turn the page, you have to have a short-term memory, and just have to move on to the next thing.
Nick, we've had Thursday games for a long time now. How has the process of recovery, getting the body back, evolved over time? Because I got to imagine there have been a lot of different changes and things experimented with.
Sure. The biggest difference is this Sunday after the game, you can do some things as a player to kind of expedite that process. So really what you do is you just start your process a little bit sooner. So instead of doing it Monday or Tuesday, there's some things that you can do right after the game to kind of start to prepare your body for the recovery. The reality is it's an enormous stress on the players and their bodies. It's very taxing. What went on in the game is very taxing, so the ability to recover. So hopefully you've done enough leading up to that point and you're training all the way through, and there'll be some things specifically that you can do immediately after to help expedite your recovery so that when you go out there Thursday, you can feel as fresh as you possibly can.
Nick, not a team that we face often, the Philadelphia Eagles, but we all know 7-0, look great, dominated the Steelers yesterday. What do you see from the Eagles? Let's dive into the scouting report from them.
Yeah, I mean, they're the best team in the league. They have the best record. A lot of good players. I'd say Howie's done a really good job of putting the team together. Howie's been there a long time. He's been been a part of a lot of really good football teams and seen a lot of good football players. And I think Nick has come in and kind of added his stamp in a short period of time. So come in last year, his first year as a head coach, to go to the playoffs, made some strides, and they've actually just built on some of the things that they did, last season. So Nick's an offensive coach, has a really good staff. I'd say Nick's involved pretty much in everything. It's Shane Steichen's the offensive coordinator, who has a background, with Nick with the Chargers. And then JG is a really good defensive coordinator, experienced coach. He's been part of a lot of good systems. Coach Zimmer, Coach Staley, and in his second season as a defensive coordinator. So they have a really good coaching staff. I think one of the coaches that has been there, regardless of who the head coach has been, is Jeff Stoutland. So Stoutland's one of the best offensive line coaches in the league, and he's a big part of what they're doing, whether it's a run game, whether it's in pass protection. So I'd say it kind of starts at the top. So good organizational structure, from Mr. Lurie to Howie, and then the coaching staff's a really good coaching staff, a lot of experienced coaches, and they have a lot of really good players on really both sides of the ball, and then a lot of those players are involved in the kicking game as well.
What do you make of the evolution of Jalen Hurts at the quarterback position? Because 2 years ago, you look at the completion percentage, low 50s. It gets better every year. Everything is getting better every year for him. So what about his progress, Nick?
Yeah, I think even you go back and look at him from Alabama to Oklahoma, he's a player that's always improved from 1 year to the next. So when he was at Alabama, obviously got replaced by Tua, and then he went to Oklahoma, kind of shifted systems, playing in Lincoln's offense. And then this is his third year in the league, but really it's his second year playing. I'd say he's grown and improved probably as much as any player on their team. Understands what they're trying to do offensively, makes really good decisions. He's a very smart, instinctive player. And they have certain plays that are designed. There's a big RPO element, what they do offensively. He usually makes the right decision, a good decision. He's an accurate thrower. He's got good skill players around him. And I'd say he's hard to tackle. He's probably one of the better running quarterbacks in the league, not necessarily because he's the fastest, but he has really good lower body strength. And when you look at their 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 plays, they sneak the ball more than any team in the league. And a lot of that is him just kind of creating a really good base and creating leverage and getting movement. And he's hard to tackle. He kind of avoids making a big hit. So runs their offense very well. I'd say he's a very efficient football player. He's a very smart, instinctive football player, makes the right decisions, and they're operating their offense at a high level.
Nick, when it comes to players, not just quarterbacks, but players, Jalen Hurts is a guy that always stands out to me because he's a guy that very easily could have transferred when Tua beat him out. But he stayed an entire year in 2017, and Tua gets hurt in the SEC championship game. And Jalen comes in, saves them. They get to a national championship game that year. Now, they ended up losing to Clemson, I believe, that year. But he went through adversity as a player. It wasn't smooth sailing. He then had to transfer to Oklahoma to get an opportunity, and he's obviously gotten better. How much does that play into the football character of a guy, and how much does that matter when you're looking at players that you want to acquire here?
No, it's massive. Absolutely. This game is about physical and mental toughness. So everybody sees the physical toughness, but mental toughness kind of takes on many different shapes and sizes. So in Jalen's particular case, a lot of mental toughness, and to say a lot of selflessness in terms of his attitude and his approach in terms of being a good teammate and supporting a player that essentially took your job. But he didn't pout. He just stayed ready to go. He's very professional. He has a really good demeanor, doesn't really let too much bother him. And then when he had to go in and play in the SEC championship game, he was a big part of the reason that they won that game. So it's kind of the same thing. Fast forward, drafted in 2nd round, didn't really play much as a rookie, was thrust into the lineup, and he's taken advantage of his opportunity. And he has a good, I would say, demeanor and presence about him. And really, it's permeated the entire team. And he's kind of talked about that and spoke on it here, recently. But they're kind of a reflection of him, his personality to some degree. Each player has their own personality, but I'd say that mental and physical toughness that he possesses, when you look at their team, there's a lot of players that have those types of characteristics.
Nick, as you follow college players and evaluate them for next year's draft, I'm going to focus on that for a moment here. When you guys are doing that, do you follow the players week to week and the course of their season and how it all plays out in real time? Because I would think that gives you a different element of information as opposed to just looking at it all after the season on tape.
No, absolutely, Mark. So when you kind of look at our process, so I'd say the first initial visit is going to be probably sometime in training camp. So you see him in practice, you see him in that environment, and then you'll probably see him live at a game, and then you'll go back into the school, and then you'll get more follow-up information. So you're not necessarily tracking week to week, but there's multiple checkpoints. You could have, let's say, 3 or 4 different opportunities, exposures during the course of the year where you see a player, where you're getting information, where you talk to a coach before the game, you see something at practice, you see something happen during a game. So I'd say that's the benefit. You don't want to wait until, okay, season's over, now it's time to get ready for the draft. All right, let's start our process. We have a lot of information that comes in our system, so we can kind of track these players. And the area scouts, I'd say they're in the schools on a weekly basis, daily basis. They're basically at a different school each day. and you're looking at different players. So you're trying to create a profile of what we think we're going to have with that particular player. So it doesn't necessarily automatically mean they're going to be the best player, but here's his attributes, here's what he possesses, here's his characteristics. And then if you're able to see something live, I've had the good fortune of being able to go to some games this year. And again, you're not going specifically to a certain game to watch a specific player. You're investing in the person along with the player, but the person is a big part of it.
And the Eagles invested in a big fella, Jordan Davis, but got banged up yesterday, and it looks like he's going to definitely miss this game. How much do they miss without having that dude in the middle?
Yeah, I'd say the defensive line is probably the strength of their defense. It's really kind of a front seven, so they usually have sort of 5 down. They usually have somebody on each offensive lineman, or the 3 interior guys, and usually have somebody on the perimeter. Jordan was playing about 25-30%, massive presence in the middle of the defense. So when he was able to get going vertically, he just stressed, I would say, the interior of the offensive line. But when they have a good front, they play everybody. They play 8-9 guys at the game. I mean, Fletcher Cox has been as consistent and as productive a player for as long as he's been in the league. BG, Brandon Graham's kind of in the same boat. And those are 2 players that have been there a long time. They kind of seen the ups and downs, but they're really good football players. Sweat has kind of developed there on the edge. Kind of had an injury coming out, but he's kind of evolved. They signed Reddick in free agency, who's a really good pass rusher. Had a real productive season, last year in Carolina. They just traded for Quinn. So they present a lot of problems on the front there. A couple good linebackers, and then Slay and Bradbury have played, probably as good as any corners in the league this year. Traded for Gardner Johnson there right around training camp or the end of the preseason. So they've upgraded their talent. So if Davis doesn't play, it'll be a little bit of a loss there for him. He's done a good job for him, but they have plenty of other players that can kind of pick up the slack.
You talked with the defense about needing to tackle better and everything. Offensively, to move the ball better, obviously better than Sunday, but on a short week, what's important about rallying in a short amount of time to get things moving in the right direction on Thursday night?
Yeah, sometimes you find going from Sunday to Thursday, you just have to simplify things a little bit. It's not about necessarily a bunch of new plays or doing a bunch of new things. So there's probably going to be some degree of carryover. What you call or some of the plays are going to have some application to what Philly does. I'd say really where you're going to have some specific things will probably be third down in the red area. So the big thing from the Tennessee game, we just had too many negative plays on first and second down. So 1st and 10 went from 2nd and 15, or 2nd and 2 went to 2nd and 12. So those negative plays just limited the negative plays because it has a trickle-down effect on what happens on third down. So if we can just kind of stay out of the negative play situation and just kind of keep the ball moving forward, then it'll put ourselves in a position where, the Eagles are, they're top, I want to say, 10 in a lot of the statistical categories on defense. So, to beat a good team, we're going to have to make sure we execute and just try to limit the negative plays and take care of the football. Will certainly be at a premium.
I certainly remember a time on a Thursday night, week 3 of 2016, when a team had to put in almost a whole new offense to beat us 27-0. Not that we need to bring that all up, but it's been done before.
It wasn't a new offense. There was a couple maybe scheme plays that went in for that one.
I didn't see Tom Brady running quarterback run around the corner. I didn't see that in the playbook anywhere. Eagles with their running game, it's Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, but it's the way they go about it, Nick. The zone read and the thing that they're doing there, which can be very difficult to stop. Obviously, the Titans ran a little bit of zone read yesterday, and that's what Henry got his touchdown on. Even though it was a give, it's that aspect. How difficult does that become to prepare? Because you don't see that every week, but you did see it a little bit against the Titans, so did that help going into Thursday?
Yeah, smaller dose will be some carryover. The plays that hurt you one week, you're inevitably probably going to see them at some point along the way. Specific to the Eagles, they're about 70% 11 personnel team, so you don't have a fullback, so one tight end, and then you're in the gun, I want to say 85-90% of the time, so wherever they displace the back, whether he's to the left of Jalen or to the right, they don't really put him in the dot position that much. So really just have to make sure that you have the offense leverage as much as possible. You have to make sure you account for everybody. But the RPO element is a huge part of their offense, and they execute at a high level. So we have to be disciplined. We have to make sure we're positioned properly. There's a certain gap of integrity that's going to have to take place, and we're just going to have to make sure that we're leveraged as much as possible. And then this goes back to kind of what we were talking about with Hurts. He's a really good decision maker, very smart, intuitive player. So inevitably, he makes the right decision based on what he sees, and it puts a lot of tax and stress on the defense.
Nick, we appreciate you wearing battle red, sort of, today during this. Your thoughts on the red helmet? I mean, that kind of juices up the players probably a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not a big fashion guy, so that's probably not my line of work. But anytime you kind of change,
Catch that ticket if you had that out there.
Introduce something a little bit new, so it adds a little bit of fervor and energy. So maybe it'll give us a chance to play better. But in the end, it's going to come down to our execution, not what color jerseys and helmets we're wearing. So it's probably more for the fans more than anything else.
We need a red vest. That's what we need. Nick, thanks a lot for joining us. Good luck.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to know when we post new content.